What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Twink Revolution. I'm Sam.
I'm Gian.
And we're here with a very special guest. We're here with Jack from the Perfume Nationalist.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being here. So Jack, as Sam said, is one of the hosts of a podcast called the Perfume Nationalist, which is a really cool, cool podcast, sort of blending together perfume and sort of cultural critique or media critique. And we'll definitely talk a lot more about the podcast. But the main reason we were interested in having Jack here is because he has this amazing encyclopedic knowledge of perfumes and scents and fragrances. And we're embracing the miasma theory of disease in the coronavirus era. We think it's caused by bad smells. So just wondering, Jack, what's the best thing we should be wearing right now in quarantine to ward off illness?
Clinique Aromatics Elixir. You know, we at the Perfume Nationalist have been on this miasma theory tip since before the pandemic really started. And Aromatics Elixir is a 70s kind of rich hippie perfume, an early experiment in aromatherapy. It smells very medieval, very bitter and sour and very intimidating to a modern nose. And it was sort of promoted with psychedelic kind of weird 70s ad copy. And it's my favorite fragrance of all time. But I can definitely see it visibly killing the virus in the air whenever I spray.
I want anything that can help me sort of simulate the experience of a 19th century plague doctor's, potpourri beak thing or mask.
Yeah, and I've long believed that mosquitoes don't bite me, and I rarely get sick because my bloodstream is so saturated with patchouli. Because, I don't have a signature scent, but I do have a signature note, and everything I really love has a strong note of patchouli, including Aromatics Elixir, and I've been saturated in it since I was about 13 years old.
Wow, and you don't have coronavirus, to be clear.
I do not yet have coronavirus, even though I am an essential worker.
Wow, the system works. So you're still working. How are you holding up under quarantine? What are your coping strategies here?
You know, actually, the pandemic has been great for me. I've only even been mildly pissed off by the recent way too late sort of mask ordinance in Austin. I'm in Austin, by the way. And the rapidly escalating necessity of masks. I mean, I'm sure they work, whatever. It just seems way too late. But other than that, my life just happened to improve immeasurably right when the pandemic kicked off. And also, I'm a person that likes staying at home. I'm social also. I don't like using the 2010s buzzword introvert, but I am a person that likes staying home and reading and watching soap operas and stuff. So there's no problem there.
So you're sort of well adapted to these conditions already. What are you what are you doing about haircuts? Because this is, I feel like, is becoming a crisis issue for a lot of people, a lot of our listeners, for me particularly. What's your plan there?
So I managed to sneak a haircut in right before everything closed, and it was rolling under that Indiana Jones Temple of Doom door of I need a haircut and a beard trim. And I still look okay now, but I have no problem with just shaving it off myself because I'm a bear daddy anyway. So
fantastic. To be clear, we're definitely keeping the representation matters. We're trying to center bear daddy voices on this podcast. Oh shit, I forgot the land acknowledgement as well, but never mind. We'll cut it in afterwards. So I want to talk a bit about the Perfume Nationalist as a podcast. I came to it through the perfume nerdery, and then started following you on Twitter. And it's a I hope you don't mind me saying it's a weird podcast. In a unique in a way that podcasts are a dime a dozen, including this one. But you guys do something pretty wacky, and in a really interesting way. Could you tell us a little bit about who's involved and how you started it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Perfume Nationalist is me. My brother is the engineer who does all the like straight guy stuff that I can't wrap my head around. He's the one who makes the amazing, frightening interludes that we use, and uploads all the stuff and edits it. I feel like we were actually a little ahead of the game, because while everyone was recording like in-person podcasts, and I was always really kind of like sad that ours was recorded remote out of necessity, now everybody has to record remote podcasts. And then Jugs, our token female, the big titty goth mommy of the Perfume Nationalist scene, she joined a little later. But yeah, it's kind of a family operation since it's two brothers.
Nice. They pass it down through the generations, the kids.
Yeah, and it's my brother that got me to start doing it. Like, I would never have done it without his technical initiative, because I've been lurking around on the like online perfume scene for the last 10 years. You've probably seen my reviews on like Base Notes and Fragrantica, and like some of them are really old, and some like I did go through like a mass purge at one point and like deleted them all. But I used to like be all up in those like Facebook perfume chats when Facebook was still a thing. And I always wanted to do something larger with my perfume hobby.
Nice. And so what's the sort of, sorry, just to elaborate on the format. So it's usually one perfume and one cultural product, right? Like a movie, or you've been doing a lot of very obscure movies recently. You've been doing, you've done podcasts in the past, for example, all sorts of things. And then these amazing like vaporwavy, spacey interludes, right? That kind of separate the two parts.
Yeah, so I pair a relevant perfume with media. You know, you could accurately describe Perfume Nationalist as a cinema podcast, because now there's always a movie. When we started out, we were doing some books, but now since my brother has a child, I can no longer force him to like read entire books every week. But we've done an episode on a video game, Final Fantasy VI. We've done hentai. We did Uratsuki Doji, Legend of the Overfiend. The sort of overarching thematic obsession of it, though, is with soap operas, because I feel that soap operas are a really neglected art form. Generally, we champion just maximalist, over-the-top stuff of excessive length. You know, any movie that's longer than 3 hours, I'm interested in. But soap operas are of particular interest to me because it's this massive, uncontainable narrative that's happening for an hour every day for like 50 years, sometimes more than that. And it's just unthinkable. So I like drawing attention to this sort of lost format. But yeah, we do all sorts of things. We do a lot of art movies, some straight up pornos. I like pornography a lot. In the tradition of Camille Paglia, I'm a big champion of porn, and similar to soap operas, the like great golden age pornos of the 70s and 80s have been really forgotten. And I think if people got into them, they would find them really trippy. So we've done like Through the Looking Glass, and then other stuff that sort of straddles the line between porn and mainstream cinema, like Nymphomaniac and Melancholy der Engel and Girls.
I made Sam watch half of Nymphomaniac. He wouldn't watch the second half.
No, we haven't gotten.
You gotta get to the second.
Yeah, half. I've seen it. But,
I hope you were watching the full 5.5 hour
of course.
version.
Oh yeah.
No, there's nothing, no other, except no substitutes there. It's funny you mentioned the soap opera kind of thing. I was absolutely obsessed with As the World Turns for a while. And only because there was some like deep existential quality to the practice of recasting people in a way that just doesn't make any sense, even within the logic of the universe, where it's like, you know, little Jimmy went off to war at the age of 11, then comes back and is now 37 years old, and they've skipped a generation, recast an actor, but the grandmother's still the same actor, so it's still the same age. And I just always loved that shit. It's sort of reading the meta narrative of the soap opera is even more interesting than the stories.
Oh my gosh, you're getting me really excited. So yeah, that's something that we've discussed before. I love recasting as well, and I think that for art, it does represent a kind of randomized truth because people's personalities do completely change, and sometimes some there's more thought put into some recastings than others, but there's a season of Dallas where Miss Ellie, the matriarch of the family, is randomly recast as Donna Reed, who looks nothing like her and acts nothing like her, and it just adds this kind of like Twin Peaks Black Lodge feeling to the proceedings. But yeah, on daytime soaps, when they recast someone, that announcer comes on that's like, the role of Lauren will now be played by so and so. I really like that, it always reminds me of Buñuel's Obscure Object of Desire, where multiple actresses interchangeably play the same woman,
or famously The Room, where the psychiatrist friend just randomly is recast halfway through without explanation for the audience.
Oh, does that happen in that? I've seen that once, like 15 years ago.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. If you'd only seen it once, you probably wouldn't even caught the fact that it was meant to be the same character. But it's that's another sublime moment of recasting in cinema. So I did want to ask about the nationalist part of Perfume Nationalist, because it scares some people, and I've heard you variously called left adjacent, or a gay Nazi, or alt-righty. Never alt-right, just alt-righty. So I'm super curious about the bit of what makes you a Perfume Nationalist, and then also what are people reading into there?
Yeah. So first of all, that title was clearly intended to be sort of tongue-in-cheek.
People don't understand humor.
People don't understand humor, especially when it comes to like forbidden politics. In turn, I don't identify as much of anything. Realistically, I identify most like in the Camille Paglia realm of kind of gay libertarian, a word you can't say now because it's so uncool, but like objectively most people are to a degree libertarian in some way. But the nationalist part, there's one aspect of it, and that's that if you're gay or you're a woman, you have to go harder with the edgy material in order to get straight guys to listen to you.
We haven't succeeded there at all, so
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, putting that in the title drew in a crowd of predominantly straight guys that would likely never listen to a gay show about perfume and soap operas. And it worked, and they like it. Like, when people listen to the show, they like it. They hear the concept. They make some sort of assumptions based on the title or the content or on my tweets or whatever. But to a degree, I feel like I'm uncancelable for the simple reason that when people try to describe my show, they sound ridiculous. Like, I've always been interested in transgression, covering transgressive art. And I did the show in large part because of the escalating normalization of censorship in the 2010s. And throughout that decade, I saw young people just inexplicably begin to hate free speech, and free speech was stigmatized as, this sort of white nationalist imaginary like network of Nazis and Klansmen value, and that was like a very deliberate thing done by bad people. And it's my show is a reaction against that, and the word, choosing a stigmatized word like that was a deliberate troll. But it's a word that the leader of the free world has identified as. But I think a lot of people that would come to the show and listen to it for more of that content would probably be disappointed to find that it's such a like casual, like good vibes, casually inclusive show. Like, we had the first Perfume Nationalist Discord chat a few weeks ago, and all we were saying like the whole time was like, this is the kind of like queer, feminist, body positive thing done organically that liberals have been trying to do for 10 years through social engineering. And our fan base, we have like a small but devoted fan base, but people are attracted to the show because it's about things that we like. And I like talking about media and art that I love, that makes my life better, rather than just railing on about flash in the pan politics or things that I hate, as so much content does. So our motto is live, laugh, love, which we've sort of appropriated from the white woman.
I haven't seen that anywhere else. I think that's original.
Yeah. And, we take a lot of kind of white woman self-care culture, obviously treating yourself to perfumes and skincare and baths and eating at the Cheesecake Factory and just kind of enjoying American trash culture in a very good-natured and authentic way. Like people might be scared away by the title of the show, but then they realize it's about something completely different. And I was just saying this on Twitter today. It's like a band called Marilyn Manson in the 1990s was distributed globally by a massive record company, a massive record label, and Gen X understood edgelording and trolling and like transgression, and that was like a value for them. And now people think of things in these overly simplistic Nazi versus angel terms, and they just, I think with this pandemic it's going to go away, hopefully, but I just want to get people to pull back and evaluate things critically, creatively, in a unique way beyond this narrow, myopic vision of politics of the 2010s that we've been trapped under.
It is interesting to think of, if you were sort of extremely online in the 2000s, as I was, the cultural shift sort of happened around you. It's not like one sort of it seems like even stuff that was just mainstream on network television in the 2000s, right, is just unthinkable these days. And then just
South Park? Yeah,
South Park, Mad TV. Like, can you imagine making that today?
all of it.
Yeah, no, just all of it, and sort of just stuff that was like incredibly mainstream opinions to have, and they weren't necessarily opinions anybody agreed with, but you wouldn't sort of get the vapors and take to your fainting couch if you heard somebody express some of these opinions. And yeah, we've kind of got to a point where there's a propensity to, as you say, right, kind of just call anyone a Nazi for holding opinions that literally in 2008 probably about 90% of our Congress held or something.
And the irony here is that I've been out of the closet and aggressively openly gay since I was 14, which would have been 2001, 2002. And, I was in Central Texas. Like, people forget, like, in the 2000s, like, homosexual, it was totally acceptable to, like, not like homosexuals, to openly express that. So, like, on the one hand, it's good that my content is not viewed as specifically a gay project, but I feel compelled to defend it as such more and more these days, because like I have more gay cred than most of my haters, like, and how can you be gay and like dislike a show that's all about when gay culture was good and when homosexuals were actually funny and weren't contained as a voting block under this LGBT plus acronym that is actively hostile to men.
Well, we're, actually all the proceeds from this podcast are being donated directly to the Human Rights Campaign and their new Kill All Men fundraiser. It's really exciting.
Yeah. But like, just a final word on that, anyone that knows me can tell you that nothing about me or my political thoughts is actually objectionable. And the way that the left became so oppressive in the 2010s is through these aggressive censorship efforts. And I have deliberately, platformed, quote unquote, people that are far more extreme than me as an anti-censorship statement. I'm not extreme. I'm like, on your boomer parents level politically. But yeah, it's as a troll, the oppression that I felt the last 5 years, with all of my, liberal feminist friends who once thought that I was this, inspiring and interesting gay character, they just, immediately just ghosted with the 2016 election. I felt it on a very personal level, and I saw culture going in a very bad direction, and I wanted to try to change it in some small way with an experimental art podcast.
Which, yeah, it is. I think the point that it would be easy to miss if you just wanted to read the title and start shrieking and frantically tweeting online, would be the fact that, as you say, it's really about things you guys love. I mean, it is a podcast filled with love, and as a result, kind of it's I don't know, we just kind of exist in a sort of pit of hatred on this podcast. We just talk about the shit we like hating. Yeah. But I mean, there is something actually incredibly refreshing to kind of just hear about. Yeah, just a sort of like, hey, we really like this. And
you don't hear it because people define themselves by what they hate. It's what everyone, like, you'll just see negativity about movies. People are never, facilitating access to media that they actually like, that makes their life better, because they think that the barometer of good art is how it serves their personal political feelings. It's propaganda. And this is all just stuff that we cover that I've wanted other people to see. Like, I want to keep the dream of Knots Landing, which is my favorite show of all time and like the crowning achievement in television art. I want to keep the memory of that alive because it's nowhere now. It's not on DVD. I wanted to do a tribute to Knots Landing and all this other weird stuff that is not just dropped on your Netflix or other streaming service. And like, I feel like the way that people consume media now is just in this totally passive way that's very lame and destructive. Like, I'm from the DVD days of the early 2000s when there was this cinephilia mania. I was active on DVD forums, talking about movies with people online constantly, posting about movies. But now people just sort of passively wait for whatever content to be dripped down to them on Netflix. And like, whenever I hear about something that sounds interesting to me, I do whatever is in my power to find it. I, find the 76 burned DVDRs of Knots Landing. And I feel like more people should do that. Like, we have to keep art alive in this way rather than just let our, Disney Plus overlords decide what we can watch.
Well, I mean, I even wonder about the idea that that sort of media consumption as part of constructing a sort of personal brand, right, which is part of your value to others or how you present yourself. There was a time, right, when many sincere leftists probably had read Mein Kampf or would watch Triumph for the Will or something. And these days, I feel like if you were to say you'd read Mein Kampf, people would look at you pretty suspiciously.
Oh, yeah. Like, familiarity with a subject and reading widely is frowned upon. And that's part of that whole censorship effort that, and the anti-free speech effort that I'm talking about. And it's ridiculous because bad faith actors expose themselves. Okay. Yeah. Like, if Democrats just allowed everyone to speak, bad people would expose themselves. And adding this, allure, this romanticism of constantly deplatforming everyone, on the one hand, it has sort of worked short term for all the like MAGA crew of 2016 who successfully got deplatformed and thrown off the internet. But on the other hand, it makes particularly alienated young men who don't see themselves reflected in culture in any way go to the furthest extreme and think that the worst things that they read online all must be true because they're being suppressed. And you get this kind of mindset that everything that's suppressed by liberalism is true. And it's not. And most of these are nice guys that would not hurt a fly. People should not be treated like this for trolling. It's like, but
it's about the idea that sort of actually like your youth is no longer limited to a very small segment of people who sort of might judge you as like, oh, you're trying something out, and yeah, that bit didn't quite work, and this one does. It's just sort of done with a panopticon of people ready to murder you, right? I mean,
yeah. And everything like productive that I've ever accomplished, that has ever made me feel like I have a purpose on this earth, has been because I went against other people's advice. So ever since, I was 13 and openly gay in Central Texas, stuff like that, I was constantly going with my instinct, and I didn't have to rely on, a benevolent corporation like Dove or whatever to tell me that being gay was okay. Like I found that out through art. I found that out through reading widely, reading stuff like 120 Days of Sodom and J.G. Ballard's Crash, and American Psycho when I was 14 and 15. And like John Waters' Shock Value. Like people should find themselves and educate themselves by reading widely rather than waiting for a corporation to affirm them symbolically in a commercial.
I'm reminded of Pride Month. Sephora does a bunch of ads in the San Francisco metro they're just particularly vomit inducing.
They were like basically all these different gender identities, and like you're all valid.
Yeah.
But it's like
thanks, Sephora,
as
I was
customers,
worried. Yeah. Your money is green here. Fuck you
too. Sephora sucks because they've removed all the perfume. Basically, they used to have kind of a pretty expansive perfume section where I first smelled a lot of stuff, but now it's limited to the most like bare bones shit, and they have the same shit in every store. It's sort of so uniform. You can't really find anything good at Sephora anymore. But yeah, the woke capital advertising, that's the cherry on top.
So I did want to talk a little bit about actually the practice of wearing a scent, because many of our listeners will recall the DSA conference shit show. Point of personal privilege, et cetera, can't deal with the whispering. But it was also, clapping is violence. But it was a scent-free environment, I believe. Or they said, it was no... I can't remember the exact phrasing they used. But it's basically, they were like, no scents.
No
fragrance-free.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
That
moment... go on, sorry.
No, I mean, that was sort of... I kind of wanted to get your take on... Because there are a lot of these sort of events that are... perhaps sort of a particularly sort of liberal bent, we'll do this now. It's because it's violence against your scent allergic.
Yeah, and that's another big theme of the show. If the show can really be said to have a like political center, it's in that I'm the first person to explicitly connect scent-free policies with censorious liberalism. And I've been saying this the entire time. The entire time that I've been writing about perfume and thinking about perfume, but our whole philosophy of championing huge, uncontainable art, my core decade is the 80s, and I take total inspiration from the 80s when everything was bigger than life. Women were wearing more makeup than ever. The early entrance of women into the workplace was accompanied by amazing fashions like you see in Knots Landing and Dynasty and everything, instead of the sort of sad, wan, gray H&M disposable clothing that you see on women in the office now, where they're always freezing because the thermostat is too cold. But yeah, scent-free policies are a sort of soft fascism, if you will, and they emerged from the anti-smoking movement of the late 80s and early 90s. And you can see this documented in Todd Haynes' Safe, which is my favorite movie ever. You were talking about As the World Turns. Julianne Moore was a soap actress that started out on As the World Turns. And she's a sort of suburban California woman with no personality whatsoever. And she sort of assembles a personality once she finds out about environmental illness, which is this vague fibromyalgia, like white woman disease that doesn't have really like specific symptoms. It's just like she just has these possibly performed allergic reactions to everything, household products, whatnot, that require her to attend this expensive pyramid scam retreat. And that movie really documents the sort of early birth of hatred of perfume, though it's not mentioned specifically, cigarette smoking. The at this point totally commonplace upper middle class white woman hatred of strong smells and identity composed from chosen trendy performative allergies that we always see cycling through, like gluten, whatever. And it's totally deliberate. It's a way to exercise control over people indirectly in a passive aggressive manner, because strong scents used to be tolerated with total indifference.
Along with cigarette smoking, right? In every elevator and, conference room and cinema, everywhere. And
to people that, think that they hate cigarette smoke so much, I would say, like, it's my air too. And I hate the smell of like barren neoliberal scent-free spaces. It's just this like sad sort of like stale takeout food and dirty hair smell, because everybody, it's a big trend to like with these people to like not wash their hair, and like it's bad. And with perfumes, chronologically, 80s perfumes got bigger than ever before. Opium, Poison, everything had a really sinister name like that and was stronger than anything, Giorgio, anything that anyone had ever witnessed before. And it was a statement of power to blaze into the office in your cloud of Paloma Picasso or Poison or whatever, just, almost visible purple smog around you. And then with the 90s, fashion shifted, and there was a sort of hatred of that kind of excess. The 80s perfumes are all big incense things. Women were going around smelling like cathedrals, basically. And then with the 90s, the sort of clean, office-friendly, aquatic trend took over.
Is this the blue wave and things like that? Yeah, okay.
Which we're still in for the last, quarter century, more than that. We've been in this anorexic aquatic funk where, with the 90s stuff, the paradox was that they were actually extremely strong. Like CK1 was extremely strong.
Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth Arden Sunflowers, all these aquatics. So there were still strong perfumes. And then scent-free mania really took off in the last 15 years, I'd say, where predominantly upper middle class white people just don't think it's cool to wear scent. They don't see it as a fashion accessory or anything. And if they do, it's a very pale kind of eccentric molecules, like Your Skin but better, or Glossier You, something where your culpability is excused. You're I'm just wearing this one pale little ISOE super thing, rather than someone wearing something called Poison that just chokes everyone in the room and just knocks you out and has creates a visible purple smog around you. That's deliberate.
Because we're an educational podcast as well. We like to improve the lives of our listeners. How much of this do you think is about people not knowing how to wear a fragrance, in terms of, as you've alluded to right there, and radically different strengths and projections available to you. How do you sort of recommend somebody who maybe doesn't want to be that person who wears Santal 33 into the bar and makes it uninhabitable for a month?
Totally.
Like, how do you approach this if you want to give advice to the naive?
Okay, so this is something I always say on my show, is that like my recommendations are not going to make people like you, because I'm, part of my perfume philosophy is that you're wearing it to enjoy a piece of art, an olfactory art, and people have neglected this sense, the most magical of senses, for the last quarter century, and they think of smells as something negative, as an annoyance. This cultural idea is way more overbearing and over-determining than like people not quite knowing how to wear it. Because I think most people had a little familiarity in like middle school or something in the 2000s where they sprayed something on. But, you can wear things subtly. Like, even a very strong perfume, you can usually wear one spray subtly and you won't be thought of as the cologne guy. I, of course, am not that person.
But
whenever I like interview for a new job or something, it's basically like I'm in total disguise, but I'm still like, I have perfumes I wear when I'm not supposed to be wearing perfume, and I'm like, I can go with only 2 sprays, and it's really hard for me. But like, there needs to be a shift in how people view fragrance. They think that it's like something to attract people, which it can be, you can create an aura about yourself. But like perfume ads and everything always depict it as, or they used to depict it as something sexual to like lure people in. And I like to wear perfume as an armor, which goes with the miasma theory that we're talking about. I'm vindicated once again. I like keeping people away with my perfume because I don't want this kind of queasy intimacy with everyone. I don't want everyone leaning in and like me smelling their stale breath and their stale hair. Like, I just want to keep people at a distance, which again is probably why I'm flourishing under this pandemic. But I personally do a spray on my neck and a spray on the top of my wrist, which is what I smell all day. It's like my little like olfactory theater where I lift my wrist to my nose all day, which is the most important part to me. But also, there's this kind of myth that people have absorbed that you're supposed to spray a mist and walk through it. That's a waste of perfume unless you do it after saturating your body with perfume. And then as a final touch to sort of accent your clothes, you walk through the mist. Sure.
It's fascinating you talk about us sort of neglecting smell as a sense. I've always sort of had this idea, and I'm sure people experience it differently, but for me, right, I can recall a sound with pretty good, I remember a sound, I can imagine what something looks like or remember what something looks like. I cannot remember smells. I can verbalize my recollections of what something smells like. But I cannot actually recall the experience of a smell, and yet it's so evocative of memory and things like that. Like, it feels like a giant loss, right, when we don't have that. My first boyfriend's perfume, if I ever smell it, it just takes me back to a different time immediately. It's like, it feels like we're giving something up.
It's magical. It's absolute magic, and like, it's a cliche to bring it up, but it's totally Proust. It's eating the Madeleine and triggering all of these memories, and scent does that in a way that's so nonverbal, which is I think what takes people aback. It's so intimate, and it makes people uncomfortable in that way, that just kind of having your nostrils assaulted with these memories that you don't really know how to describe. And if you don't have a vocabulary to describe scent, that's not a problem whatsoever. If you want to develop one, I would recommend one book, and that's Lukather and Antonio Sanchez's Perfumes, the Guide, which they've released several editions of. But it came out in I think 2007, 2008, and that's what totally exploded a bomb and created this whole online perfume scene. Most of which is very stodgy and boring and just kind of like women with like graduate degrees and a slim volume of poetry, like describing their Mitsuko or whatever on the porch. But read that book. That's what got me into it. And it's a really funny book. It's something to keep by the toilet or by the bathtub and just pick up and read reviews all the time. And you'll develop an interest in perfume. And once you kind of have an idea of the different genres, chypres, orientals, florals, fougères, you'll definitely want to start smelling stuff. And you will pick up a kind of vocabulary once you smell widely. I'd encourage people to read widely and fearlessly and smell widely and fearlessly.
The other thing I noticed about your podcast is the perfumes you choose are not necessarily the high-end, extremely rare and exclusive ones, right? You kind of actually a friend of the show, David, who is the one who probably kind of really got me into perfumes a lot, has sort of always had this wonderful ability to pick up things like just totally off-the-shelf releases and kind of be like, yeah, I actually enjoy this one for these reasons. And this other incredibly expensive high-end thing, yeah, I enjoy that, but actually it's not good in this way. And sort of not buying into maybe too much of the marketing around it. Do you think people get put off by some of the idea that like, well, it's a perfume you can buy in Macy's, so it must be trash, whereas the one I pay $800 for must be the good one, right?
Well, Luca Turin said it before me, but the only attraction that cheap perfumes have is that they smell good. There's not status attached to them. So keep that very basic fact in mind. But my interests cover the entire spectrum. I'm a working class service industry person, and some people would think the amount of perfume that I own is pretty insane, but it's an affordable pleasure. It's an affordable luxury. And that's why fashion houses began putting out bespoke perfumes, is because people who couldn't afford the lifestyle presented by the clothing could afford the perfume. And perfume is still, even with the price gouge stuff, it's still a relatively affordable luxury. And it takes so long to go through a bottle, even for someone like me. So if you buy, say a bottle of Chanel No. 5 that costs about $140 for 100 milliliters of the EDP, that $140, which could have been used up with 3 or 4 Uber Eats or Favor meals,
half a bag of ketamine
instantly. Yeah, why do people have this aversion to paying for art and paying for things that improve your life and your perception of your existence, your spirit, even in this way? Nobody wants to pay. They'll pay for endless takeout food, but they won't buy a perfume that costs $140.
I'm right there. So I have quite a perfume collection.
Were you the one that I was talking?
Yeah, we were. I was.
Got that drawer.
Yeah, that's the drawer.
Oh, that's crazy. I did feel a little pang of pain for the perfumes in that drawer.
Yeah,
they're all jumbling around. You need to sort that out.
I live in a very small apartment. I have a lot of perfumes and very few dark places to put them. So I posted a photo of my absolute trash pile of fragrances.
But you had some good stuff in there.
Oh yeah. So we wanted to play a little game.
Yeah. Okay.
So Sam is not really into perfumes. He's just, not hostile to them. Just doesn't really. It's not a thing he does. So I've lined up a few, and what I wanted to do is maybe I'm going to hand him a sample. I've got some little tester strips here, and he's gonna tell us what he thinks of it, and then you can tell him if he's wrong or not.
Okay, sure thing.
And maybe Sam, you're focusing on kind of if a handsome stranger walks up to you wearing this, will you fuck them?
Oh, okay.
All right.
I don't gotta explain what I smell. I just gotta say.
But I know you tell us your reflections. So
Okay.
this is Jubilation 25 by Amouage.
It seems kind of flowery, and that's not really my thing. So I might pass.
You're gonna pass on that one.
I'm gonna pass.
What do you think, Jack? Is he right?
I love Amouage. I don't have Jubilation 25. I have Gold Man and Opus 10, but Amouage is so opulent and so excessive, and nobody's gonna like when you wear Amouage. Like wearing Amouage is totally for you.
Oh yeah, I've received compliments on this particular one, and I think it's technically a women's fragrance, but I don't believe in gender.
There's a women's one and a men's one.
That's a good question. I actually don't remember which one I have. I think I might.
I remember that being like a big stunking incense thing.
Oh yeah, that's sort of what's going on there.
It's a heavy, woody, spicy incense thing.
Yeah, and I think there's a big patchouli note in there as well. Just sort of.
Yeah, have you smelled Gold Man? Because
no.
Like nothing else on earth. Everybody, okay, here's what other people will say when you wear gold, Amouage gold. People will go, when is that baby powder and patchouli smell? They'll say baby powder. And I'm like, this is like no baby powder you've ever smelled. It smells like a men's version of Chanel No. 5 or Joy turned up to 100. And it has a huge poopy civet note. Civet, for
lovely.
Those that don't know, is like cat ass musk that has a fecal sexy quality, but it has a huge civet note, a huge incense note, but yeah, people won't get it. Like I have the same bottle of Amouage Gold that I've been wearing for like 10 years, and I'm wearing it for me to feel like the Maharaja in Temple of Doom.
All right, I've handed Sam the next strip. Sam, what do you think? This is Chanel Egoiste. This is the Edith version.
I don't know what it smells like, but I like it. But it's less dramatic than the first one. The first one was very overwhelming. Well, this one's much more like subtle, but it's like nice.
It's funny. So it reads to me like as powdery. And it's funny you say the baby powder thing, but apparently it's such a constructed memory from like the kinds of baby powders you probably had around you as a child. Like you're usually probably smelling like iris or rose or something, right? But it's like very dependent. Different people will describe a different version of powdery, I think. Okay, so that was a yes to smash.
Yeah, but it's not a high yes. It's like a like a 7.
Tentative. But Jack, you're a fan of Egoiste?
I'm a huge fan of Egoiste, and Egoiste has the single greatest perfume TV ad that has ever been made.
Oh yeah.
With the women, sort of Gautier-looking women, like screaming out their doors of their apartments, Egoiste, Egoiste. And it's from that total like late 80s, early 90s moment when like serious adult entertainment, like The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, and Madonna, Truth or Dare, intersected with fashion, like this perfume and like Jean-Paul Gaultier and Madonna's Blonde Ambition tour and everything. It just reminds me of very like dignified and Almodovar movies too, dignified, interesting time for the sort of overlapping of fashion and art and pop culture. We covered Egoiste not that long ago and paired it with American Psycho.
Oh, is that the episode? So I will admit I've dug back through a few of your episodes, but I'm still working my way back, and I saw that one, but I've not listened to it yet.
Yeah, that's our Egoiste one. Nice. But yeah, Egoiste to me, I don't get powder from it. I get cinnamon, rose, and sandalwood. Yeah,
that's slightly kind of almost soapy sandalwood to me. It's
yeah, it does have a soapy and hygienic quality, but whenever people are asking me what cologne should I buy for a certain budget or whatever, I tell them Antaeus and Egoiste, which tragically you cannot get in stores anymore almost ever, but those are the two greatest Chanel men's fragrances.
Yeah, and Antaeus is still pretty easy to find, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're affordable. I rarely see them in stores. I saw them, previously a lot more, but Nordstrom used to carry it, but they scaled down production. But I just wanted people buying this stuff to keep them making it.
Agreed. I'm a big fan of that one. Okay, so it's funny you talk about sexy ads because I just handed Sam two, not one, but two sprays of Kuros by Yves Saint Laurent. He's looking pensive and thoughtful. He's sniffing it pretty close to his nose too. There's like nose to test.
It smells kind of stinky, but not in a bad way. It has like the most like masculine like aspect of all the ones you've given me so far.
You're getting kind of notes of ball sweat.
Yeah, but I don't know if I like it or not. I'm torn. Like, I like it and I don't like it.
Jack, can you maybe describe Kuros? Because I feel like you can do a much better job because you did an episode on it, I believe.
Yeah, we paired Kuros with John Milius's Conan the Barbarian. And Kuros is probably the most famous explicitly animalic perfume ever. Like, you'll see love it or hate it polarized reviews all over the internet because it has this massive poopy civet note and generally smells like a men's restroom. Like, which is also why it's so amazing, because like the old perfumes would create the sense of a complete space. Like Kuros has an incense note, but it also has this menthol, camphor, like athletic rub quality, and it also smells like shit and piss.
Oh yeah.
Probably less so in recent versions that are a lot cheaper, but I've never smelled original production Kuros, but that's when it had real civet and it would have been really poopy. But that was one of the first ones that I got into when I started buying perfumes.
So I think I'm going to get fact checked on this by David, who actually gifted me this bottle. But I believe this is a 90s bottle of Kuros.
The first one that I smelled, or the first time I bought it, was like late 2000s, and there was already a difference. It's still great. It's still deathly strong. And
it's a lot quieter now. The newest editions, I think, are. It's still loud as hell, but it's much quieter than apparently.
It's a lady killer, though. Like the Polo is a lady killer, and it's also something that can be worn subtly by guys that don't want to be the cologne guy. Like one spray of Kuros on your chest after the shower and not doing anything else, you'll be a lady killer, because it has an incredible suggestive musk to it.
Oh yeah. So I've just handed Sam the next one. Sorry, there's two more after this one because I didn't really count. I have you on the line once. I get to nerd out with perfume.
I could do this all day.
Right. So I've just handed him Galop d'Hermès. This is another one. So a woman's fragrance. Sam, what do you think?
It kind of gives me like a combo between like cotton candy and like the aerosol spray you do after the bathroom, but like in a way that's manageable. So it's not bad, but it's like if it was any stronger, it would just be horrible. It's the aspect I dislike in smell is that kind of like fake floral scent. But like kind of sweet. It's kind of sweet as well.
Yeah. So I don't know, Jack, if you've smelled this one.
I think I've smelled it in passing once. Okay. I'm not that interested in newer Hermès releases. Isn't that some kind of like rose?
It's basically just two things. It's a really distinctive Hermès leather. It's meant to smell like an Hermès leather bag, and it's a very legible leather. And then just a beautiful kind of like quite subtle rose. And I find on skin it's much more subtle. I really love that one. But air freshener and what do you say?
Cotton candy
and air freshener apparently is what Sam's going with on that one.
Have you smelled Bel Ami and the original Hermès scent Eau d'Hermès?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, Bel Ami is coming up after this one.
Oh no way!
Yeah.
Eau d'Hermès is filthy. We did a 4.5 hour experimental on the streets episode called The Mall, where it's me and my brother going through the Galleria in Houston and with a Zoom recorder and like talking to sales associates and smelling different perfumes and eventually eating at the Cheesecake Factory. And Eau d'Hermès was the one that we like talked about the most because it's so filthy. It really does smell like ass crack. Like,
yeah.
And it came out
but in a very appealing way. And it's funny to say that, right? But
human ass crack. It's like it's like ideal, we're all gay here, but it's like, the guy that showered 4 hours ago.
Yeah. Okay, so I've just handed Sam the next one. He's smelling Tom Ford Tobacco Oud Intense in the Eau de Parfum version.
I don't know what the smell is, but it smells like
probably blowing out his nose at the last honestly at this point.
Well, it reminds me of something I think my mom wore as like a perfume.
Interesting.
But also I think it's my favorite. It has kind of
evocative sense.
Yeah.
Yet again, see, we're going back to memory. What do you think of Tom Ford in general, Jack?
I don't know that specific fragrance. The best stuff that Tom Ford did was when he was in charge of YSL and Gucci and Estee Lauder in the late 90s and early 2000s. And he put out Gucci Rush, inspired by poppers, and put out in an opaque plastic red VHS tape bottle. And that one's still very much around. It's the last good thing that Gucci still puts out. He did Gucci Envy. He did YSL M7, which was credited with introducing oud to Western audiences, and it had a very provocative ad with a full frontal hairy guy. But then when he started his bespoke brand, things got less interesting to me for the simple fact of I think it's bad marketing to put out so many releases. And that's what all of these niche houses do now, is they just put out 8 things at once and discontinue half of them. I believe it speaks of a lack of confidence in your product. I think Terry Mugler has the ideal business model.
Oh yeah.
Because Mugler has only put out like 4 different pillar fragrances or something like that. They're just selling Angel. You're the Angel woman, or you're the alien woman. But this vague something for everyone, grab bag menu customizable thing that niche brands are doing now, taking after Tom Ford, I really don't like it. And also I think they're totally like price gouged.
They are. Those ones are pricey.
No, nothing should be more expensive than, I'll say, $250 for 100 milliliters, which is what, like a Tom Ford, I think you get like 50.
You get maybe 50 mils for some, and I think that some of the specialist ones are getting to like $300.
Yeah.
For 50 mils. So for our last one, and you've alluded to it already, I've handed Sam Bellamy by Hermes.
Is that created by Bellamy Porn Studios?
Yeah, it's related to Bellamy, Bellamy Porn Studio. Yeah, this is the Eau de Toilette.
It gives me kind of like an herbal sense. I think it's rosemary. I can't place it because my nose is kind of like it's full of like an orgy of smells that should never go together. But I think it's rosemary, and I like it. I like the herbal kind of smell.
There's some sort of dry kitchen spice going on there.
Is it rosemary? I don't know.
I don't know if it's rosemary. I sort of read it as kitchen spice in general.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it's actually just the distilled sweat of 30 exploited Czech porn stars.
And Slovak.
Yes. Are you a fan of Bellamy, Jack?
I am. I actually only recently came to Bellamy and bought a bottle like 2 or 3 months ago. It was one of those 80s men's leathers that I had yet to try in the like 12 or something years that I've been into perfume. And I sprayed that on as I was going around beautiful North Park Mall in Dallas, Texas. And that stood out. It's such a gorgeous kind of gasoline, extremely masculine scent. And with Hermes, you can totally smell the quality of the ingredients with that one. I love cheap stuff, but it often smells cheap. And like with something like Bellamy, you can smell that, okay, actual herbs did go into this. actual real plants and stuff went into the making of this perfume. But it's very sexy and very underrated, I think.
It wears well. And I think it's one of these ones where, you know, Hermes, despite its reputation as a sort of high-end luxury brand, as you sort of alluded to, right, the fragrances are often the affordable part in the store. I think a bottle of, like a 100 ml bottle of Bellamy is going for less than $200. I don't remember exactly what they cost.
Yeah, it's like Chanel prices.
Yeah, it's really
like
not
140
bad.
for, you know.
Yeah, compared to, you know, it's $12,000 for a scarf or whatever. But like,
yeah,
you know, but you can walk in and you can buy the genuine Hermes luxury item. Yeah, and it's as you say, it's a work of art. You know, it's a work of art you can wear and be part of. That's about all we have time for, I'm afraid. But I feel like we could do this all day. But I feel like this will be incredibly alienating to all our scent sensitive listeners. We've triggered a lot of people.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have those performative allergies going off.
Yeah, I can smell it through the recorder. Cool. Well, so Jack's podcast is The Perfume Nationalist. Get it where all good podcasts are sold. You can find them on Patreon as well. Well worth your money.
We'll link it as well.
For less than 1/20th of the price of a bottle of good perfume, you can per month. You can get access to The Perfume Nationalist and all their premium episodes. Jack, thank you so much for coming and joining us.
And thank you.
Thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.